We are in Champions League, man.
That was my next
Dilly din, dilly dong, come on.
Encara Messi, 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 gol, 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 gol.
Into Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it.
I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
This is the Modern Soccer Coach Podcast with Gary Curneen.
Hello, welcome to the Modern Soccer Coach Podcast. My name is Gary Curneen. Joining me for this episode is a little panel discussion. Erwin van Bennekom, head coach at Indiana University, and Randy Waldrum, head coach at University of Pittsburgh. So both have experienced a lot of success. Randy is a head coach with Notre Dame, national champions, an unbelievable coaching resume at Baylor as well, and then at the NWSL with the Houston Dash. And then Erwin, success most recently with Duke University, and success Final Four in that program and building that program there with Robbie Church. So I wanted to talk about taking over a new program and what goes into the process of taking over that team. Everything from recruitment, everything from tactical systems, everything from culture, staff, and as much as we could get through. So hopefully you enjoy this. We'd love to hear your thoughts at Gary Curneen on Twitter, at Gary Curneen on Instagram. Always appreciate you listening to the podcast. Here is Randy and Erwin. Enjoy. All right, Randy, Erwin, thanks so much for joining me today on the Modern Soccer Coach Podcast. Really excited to have you both on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Both taking over a new program, both at the upper end of Division 1, both swimming with the Sharks this fall. So the first question I wanted to ask was, with you personally, both with your philosophy and your experience in the game at the Division 1 level, when you take over a new program, what's the first place you look to improve? So we'll start off with you, Randy.
Well, for us, and I'm not sure my situation, I'm not sure how close it is to what Erwin has there at Indiana, but, our first thing is obviously we had to change the players. I mean, and I think that's sometimes a touchy situation because, kids are at your university under the old regime and you're coming in with a different way you want to play and a different mindset of what you're looking for. So the changing of the players is probably the hardest thing to do, but you have to do it and so I think that was the very first thing before we ever even began to speak about X's and O's and, how we want to play and all that is our players, just quite frankly, what we had when we took the program over, just weren't great kids, but not at the level to play in the ACC.
All right, so we're going to go one step further then. What was how long was the process, Randy, of you finding that out? Was there an evaluation process that was weeks? Was it a couple of training sessions? How long did that go?
Yeah, I came in, my timetable, I came in actually in January last year. So I didn't really have a chance to bring in any players on my own because the signing date back then was in February. And so we really didn't have time. We kind of inherited what we had. And so the spring we had the opportunity to look at the players that we had going into our first season. And it really just took, based on the experiences that we had with my years at Notre Dame and knowing what it takes to win national championships and play in the ACC, I knew quickly in a couple of weeks that we had the players that we needed to. But what we did is we committed to try to get the most out of those players that we could, through the spring and give everybody the opportunity to maybe prove us wrong or maybe to improve enough, with us there during last fall season. But, it really didn't change much. I think we all been in this game a long time and our eyes are pretty good. And we can identify talent pretty quickly and especially at the level that we all are coaching at. So not really much changed over the time from what we initially saw, but we certainly gave it some time. We didn't come in just straight away and make all the changes.
What about you, Erwin? First thing to improve?
Yeah, similar in a sense. I think our starting point might have been a little different than Randy's from the level of talent. But I think the first thing was trying to figure out. I think the cool thing to say is always let's find out how what their qualities are and not really look at the weaknesses. But I think one of the problems is that a lot of players think they can do things that they can't. So I think first trying to figure out what their limitations are from a physical, from a technical perspective, and then figure out on top of that what their strengths are, or what they can do, and then kind of figuring out maybe because I wasn't really, this incoming recruiting class wasn't really a big part of it. We managed to get some players late, but we're working with the players that were here, and there's loads of potential and there's loads of qualities, but there's also, I think, a lot of limitations that we had to be aware of before trying to implement a certain way of playing. So, I might have my philosophy, but I think for us to be somewhat successful this year, I think we might have to go away from that philosophy a little bit based on limitations and qualities. But I think we looked at limitations first, and then I think the other part for me was language. Just everywhere you go, it's people use just different language, and some players have worked in club situations where you hear all this jargon now, and all the people that try to be cool and players come in, but they have no clue what it means. And even the players that were here, the way I talk, and even the way how our staff starts to integrate together, we have all different language. So making sure we're on the same page first of like what do we call certain stuff, because if the language is not right, then we might be in trouble.
Yeah, you both kind of mentioned those limitations that the players have, and focusing on those players. What are the non-negotiables for a player at the elite level of Division 1 that you have personally, both with experience and with philosophy? What do you require from a player?
Yeah, I think just giving it some thought, because again, I know Erwin with Duke and the success Duke's had at the national level and in recent years, and certainly us having been there quite a few times with Notre Dame over the years, I think you kind of learn that there are certain things that you just can't make excuses for. And for us, it's not so much about the X's and O's as it is about the players and the expectation or standards, if you want to call it that. There are just certain things that, we won't condone or we won't alter or we won't change for anybody. Is it, that we've got a certain level of the way we want to train, the intensity level that we expect every day in training. A big word everybody likes to use out there right now is the commitment level. And that means so many different things, but certainly under our umbrella of the things that we expect our players to commit to, those are just things that we really don't waver on. I think we all know that even though we all have rules in place, I think, for our programs, we all know to an extent those kind of vary a little bit, from player to player. I mean, you're willing to put up with a little bit for some players more maybe than you would with others, not even times intentionally, but it happens. But I do think even with all of your players, whether they're your best players or they're not your best players, there's just certain expectations or core values or standards that we have as a team that no matter who you are, we're just not going to waver on that. And it's simple things, Gary. It could be as simple as, the way we train, the intensity level of training. We're not going to waver on that. Just because you're a potential college player of the year doesn't mean we're going to let you just kind of coast through training, or it may be things in terms of the academic realm. Our kids may have professors that don't require them to be in class, as long as they do well. But for us, we require them to be in class. We have expectations and the way we represent the program, some things like that. I'm not a big 35, 40, 50 rules kind of guy, but we have a few kind of standards and expectations that we have that those are just some kind of the core values that we really won't, waver on.
Erwin?
Yeah, I think from a similar, my biggest problem was just the way I think I felt like they were enduring training. It was like they were just going through training, and then you get an adaptation just because you trained. And I think that mentality of just going, getting it done. And this was the spring, but it shouldn't really matter. I think it was just, let's get this over. Well, let's get through training, and we just got better. So that to me, I try to change that mindset of no. It's like the same thing if you go to class and just sit in class and just get stuff thrown at you, it doesn't mean you got smarter. And I think that's the same thing on the training field. So actually trying to train and actually understand the not just the how, but also the why, which we went over 1,000 times. And we had the same issues with Duke early on, where I would explain something and it's just saying yes just to get the conversation over with, and then actually understanding something. So next time it happens, we have a context to that situation. So that to me was, and also to a team, I think was, it's such a hard sport, and if you don't understand what you're doing, I think all the work is for nothing. So that was a hard process, but I think we're slowly getting there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So trying to rebuild a program, especially with, I suppose, there's a transfer culture, I suppose, now in the US with players, a lot of players leaving schools. Is there the one thing that both of you never mentioned in your non-negotiables was a technical ability of a certain player? Erwin's, yours was more focused. Randy, yours was more core values. Is there a wariness of taking a player from a transfer and trying to? She might score you 10 goals, but she might be a problem. Is that ever an issue?
Oh, I think, Gary, it is. I mean, certainly the playing piece of it and the character of that player is huge for all of us. And I would say for us, building a program right now, I'm going to guess we both probably feel very much the same on this, is as you're trying to change the culture, as we talked about earlier, then certainly you don't want to bring players in off the transfer portal or even incoming freshmen. You don't want to bring players in that's going to be counterproductive to that, to the culture of your team and what you're trying to do. So, certainly I think you gotta be concerned about that piece of it. And, and I think when you talk about the technical aspects of a player, I mean, certainly we both have players that, and every coach does, that have qualities that you like and you don't like. And sometimes I may like one that you don't, and vice versa, because we know more what we're trying to see the big picture to look like, and we know how that player will fit a little bit more. But I do think that, there are some things that you just kind of go, I like this kid a lot, and she's an athletic player, and she's fast, and she's got the physical tools that we look for. But you know what? At the end of the day, she's just not good enough with the ball. And the way we want to play, we need to be better with the ball. So certainly I think those things you don't waver on either. But you do worry, and I worry a lot. The transfer portal has opened up a whole new realm, with the recruitment process. And we brought in 3 new transfers, actually 4 new transfers for this coming fall off the portal. And, I'll be quite honest with you. Unfortunately, with one of them, we got a player that doesn't live up to what we expect, with the off the field issues and things. And it's hard because all you can do is you see them off of Instat, the video of their games, and you go, well, she's a good player. I think she'll fit. And then you talk to the coach of where she transfers. And unfortunately, sometimes they're not always forthright with you. And, they're trying to unload the player as well. And I think we got some bad information. And so now we've got a situation we've got to solve. So it does become a little bit dicey for sure.
Erwin, any experience there?
We actually just had a transfer from Wake Forest commit to us the other day, and I think you never know. Even with freshmen, I think there might be with incoming freshmen that you recruited and have spent some time with, but how the recruiting process has been going, it's so fast, and you don't really get a chance to really meet somebody out and out. And I think the same thing from a player standpoint, they don't really get to know the real coach, because we're all putting up this maybe false front that they sometimes see a session, but if you have a recruit on the sideline, you might be a little different. And I think a player coming in, they project themselves a little different. So it's hard. But I think hopefully, and we saw it at Duke, we got a lot of good people just because how Robbie operated with his program. And I think that attracted the right people. And hopefully we can do the same thing. I think here what we're saying on recruiting visits and talking to people about, I think that either scares them off or excites them. And I want the player, I want the players here that excites. And I think we'll figure it out through some conversations we have. So, hopefully, I think what Randy said about, the personality piece of players. I think that's hard to change. And even 3-4 years out in recruiting, if somebody doesn't have the right mindset, who are we to think that we're going to change that? And if we think we can, do we want to take that risk? Because there's another couple thousand players out there.
And I think that's a great point too, Gary, for you with kind of the focus of this conversation is that's a little bit when you're trying to rebuild a program, that's a little bit of where a coach has to gamble, and honestly say, do I really want to take a risk on this player? I'm so anxious to change my program and make it better, but is it worth going all in on this player when I know there may be some issues or may not? So it's tempting. It's like I remember starting the program at Baylor brand new from scratch in the mid-90s, and I had all of my scholarships right from year one. And back then I think we had 12. We didn't have 14. I think we had 12. And so my biggest dilemma was, how much of this money do I want to spend right off the bat? Because I wanted to be good right away, but I had to also be frugal and understand that I only need to spend maybe 3 or 4 in year one and then build and spread that money out. And yet it's very tempting to say, no, let's go with a little bit more because I want to be better and I can get a couple more good players if I'm willing to spend a little more. And I think that's a little bit of what building and rebuilding programs like we're doing, Erwin and I are doing now, that can be a little bit tempting at times to go, you know what, she's better than what we have. There may be some things about her that we don't completely like, but she's at least going to improve us, so let's go with it. Or do you just kind of sit back and go, no, I'll be patient and make sure I'm getting all the right pieces in part? And I think for coaches, that's a tough dilemma sometimes, and especially for young coaches.
Curious to get your thoughts on that, because I would imagine when you're at the mid-major lower, like if I'm a Bakersfield, I can be patient because the program is not used to a lot of success, so I can put a 4 or 5 year plan in. When you're at those programs that you guys are at, you can't wait around for 4 or 5 years. How many risks, Randy, did you take at Notre Dame?
Yeah, I don't think, because we had the program going in such a way that, like it was mentioned earlier, that, like Robbie has at Duke, that we just kind of attracted much better quality kids because they kind of knew what the program was about. But I would also sit here and tell you that over 14 years, we probably gambled, a half a dozen times on some kids over that 14 years. We wouldn't necessarily do it one or two a year, but there would be every other year or so that one player comes along that you're willing to gamble a little bit on. And quite frankly, some worked out great, and some of the others didn't, and we knew it going in. It was a bit of a risk. It was also a little bit harder there too, mainly because you also had to factor in the difficulty of getting the kids in there academically. So that really cut a lot, out. And what I found at the schools where the academic standards are a little bit higher, I kind of just find that it just kind of correlates with the players are usually a little bit more mature, a little bit more focused, and you don't run into as many of those kids that might be at risk than at a school where you can kind of get anybody in. And I don't really mean that in a negative way, but it's just kind of the fact, And so I think it weeded a little bit of that out, for us at Notre Dame as well. But we took some risks. But I do think in this day and age, and listen, you guys are the ones out there young and getting it done now. I'm one of the old guys out there that's been doing it a long time. And just so you both know, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to go, hey, wait, I'm the old guy. And it comes quicker than you expect. So enjoy it while you can. But seriously, it's changed so much, Gary, because you're right. Even when I was at Baylor in the mid-90s, I didn't ever feel, the pressure that I felt for the job was only pressure that I put on myself to be successful and build a good program. I never really worried about losing my job. And I think that's something that now with the Power 5 conferences and the money that's in it, and as much money as they're putting in the women's sports now, then it's been recent that you're right. There's pressure to have some results and to get the results quickly, and I think it does put pressure sometimes to get this done as quick as you can. And with the recruiting being early as it is, it's been a little different for us here trying to build this and change 20 years of losing, because you may or may not realize Pittsburgh's had 2 winning seasons in 22 years, right? So a history of losing. So it in some ways, it almost would have been better if we just started from scratch, and there would be no history. But what we didn't want to do is come in here and wait 3 years, because recruits are committing 2 years in advance now as sophomores, and if we waited, we felt like if we wait, it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we can get good recruits in, but then that's 2 or 3 years of losing. And then the players will go, why would I want to go with Randy now? He hasn't won there in 2 or 3 years since he's been there. So we really had to go the international route a little bit, some transfer routes. We got quite lucky that we stumbled onto some good kids that were still available. And when we got the job, we found some kids that had committed elsewhere that, decommitted and wanted to come play for us. So we really had to ramp it up quickly in that regard to try to be successful right away.
Erwin, you and Robbie take many risks at Duke?
I think they're all risk, and especially the more money you put into a play, you only have 14 scholarships, so it's tough. And I think, I hear some people say, if you have a recruiting class of 6 or 7 players, there's always one that's going to do better than you think, and there's one that's going to disappoint you, and then I think the others in the middle will kind of be what it is. But I think we were talking about it in the office with my staff the other day. I do think I compare players to players that I've coached in the past. So if they have like kind of the same body type and the same skill set, I compare and like, okay, I can see this player being like this, because I know, I was doing Imani Dorsey where we had the Duke. We had a similar player that we were following, and I'm like, he can be like Imani Dorsey, and he's not close to being Imani Dorsey, but like I see the potential there. So I feel like I'm doing some of that stuff like that. But we have a decent group, and I think we came in that the 2019 recruiting class had already signed NLIs. And when I first talked to administration, we were like, kind of, with the 2020 class, which was a pretty big class, you gotta manage that well and have the conversations, and those conversations went, after watching that class, for the most part, was pretty quick. Like, hey, we don't want to keep doing this. We don't want to. So we had those conversations of maybe this is not the right place for you to come to play, just because we want this to be the best experience for you. So that was more the future of the program was more making some changes there and recruiting some different players. And nowadays, and I don't know how it was in the past, but there's not much we can do. It's not like we can say, hey, we're going to take your money away and go find another place. Playing time is really the only thing that we have leverage with, and for some of them don't care about playing time. So what else can we do? So I think that's the hard part, but we're trying to go about it the right way and change some things and get the most out of the players we have now and we have coming in.
I do think that's a great point on the players, Erwin, because we had to do the same. I think it's one of those where you have to sit down with the players that you have, and you want to change to get more players in that you're recruiting. But I think those are difficult conversations, but they need to be had, and they need to be honest and upfront. And that's kind of the way we handled it too with our players, is we just basically said, listen, you're here, and if you want to stay, we'll work with you and do the best we can with you. And, but right now, this is kind of where we see you fitting in moving forward with the new staff and the way we want to play. And, and if we felt like their playing time wasn't going to be there like it had been, or that we didn't see them really in our plans, we had to have those honest conversations and let them know that. So they might not like to hear it, and they're hard conversations to have as coaches, but at least you can know that you've been honest and upfront. And so if they choose to stay, then they were warned, that things are changing, and this is where we see you, but it also gives them the opportunity to go, well, you know what, I do want to play, and I would rather go somewhere where I know I'm going to play a lot. And so, that's kind of the way you handle it. I think it's the professional way to do it. And so I think we're very similar in that.
I agree, Randy. I think, the hard part is the perception out there that, I'm not too worried about it, but, there's been coaches that have changed programs around and basically they call it get rid of like 15 players and get their own players in, and they now have a back rep. But you're like, anybody in those shoes, you're not just getting rid of players. Anybody that's you can't just tell them to go. You have honest conversations, and if they decide to go in a different direction, that's more than fair, and that's the right thing to do by everybody. And it's hard, the jobs are on the line, and you also want to make sure. And the whole, I say this all the time, the whole transfer thing. Maybe it's because I'm not from here and I didn't went to college in the U.S. I think it's not a problem. Like transferring, it's like if you don't like your job, you change your job. You go somewhere else. And in transferring, I've multiple people that I know that transferred within the U.S. that went from one school, created a friend group and a network group, and then went somewhere else and had a whole different experience in a different part of the country, and got $50,000 a year in scholarship money. Yeah. I don't see the issue here.
Yeah. No, and I've always felt this way, and I know there's a lot of coaches in the country with the players that transfer won't release them and are vindictive because they want to leave. But I've just always kind of felt like if the player doesn't want to play for me or doesn't want to be at our program, then I don't want that player anyway, because I'm not going to get the commitment level that I need out of them anyway. So I agree totally. I've always been fine with the transfer. You hate to lose kids, but if for whatever reason it's not a good fit, then let them go where it's a good fit. It's their career, and you want them to be happy, and that player will basically bring you down anyway if you force them to stay because you threaten to make them sit a year. I don't want those players in my program either. So I think you're absolutely right on that.
But is it harder then you're talking like a demotivated player who maybe comes in and then loses a bit of form, and then you spell out that they're not going to get the opportunities, they're not going to get the playing time. The fact that you're sitting on a campus at one of the best schools in the US, if it's Indiana, Duke, if it's Pittsburgh, if it's Notre Dame, Baylor, these are all big schools. Is there a problem that the player says, oh yeah, that's fine, I'm happy sitting here on the bench and just doing the minimum, and then you've got 90% scholarship in here? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think by the rules that we live under, there's really not much we can do. Is what Erwin and I talking about that is there's not much you can do. I mean, they have the rights and they're protected by the commitments that were made in the letter of intents that they signed. And I think at that point, then I'm kind of one that for me, I'm not the kind of coach that will hold that, against the player. I think now then, okay, if you want to stay and understanding where this discussion that we just had and you still don't want to leave, that's great. But let's get to work, and I think our job is to get the best and the most out of our players that we can while they're getting their education taken care of. So I think you gotta just plug away as if she was one that you recruited and try to get the most out of them, because it doesn't do you any good in the long run to be upset with her or vindictive or to keep her in a demoted state if that player does have some abilities that can help you in whatever capacity. And I'm just a real big believer in this. And I think and Erwin, you may feel a little different. I don't know about your teams at Duke that got to the Final Fours and things, but I always felt like the teams that we had at Notre Dame that won the championships, they weren't always our most talented teams. They were our best teams in terms of the best players playing together. But the one common thread that those teams had were not only the players that started, had everything in order and did the things that we asked and were committed, but the players that were their reserves, while they competed every day to try to take some playing time away, they were highly supportive of the player in front of them. So it's kind of like your whole roster was all in, so to speak, on the idea of let's do this together. And they were able to understand their role, like, getting them to understand that my role right now is, even though I want to be a starter, my role is I'm a reserve. And so my job every day at training is to put my best out there so the player in front of me has to get better, And if you get that starting group after a month or so of your season, and then the reserves that realize that they've learned the pecking order now that they're the reserve, oftentimes in programs, those reserves kind of just drop off and become a little bit more disinterested and can't stay motivated. So I think if you got that player that wants to stay, even though you've encouraged them to look elsewhere, you want them to be there to push every day in training. So I think you just got to put the work in and say, okay, then let's let's get to work and let's get the best out of you that we can. That's kind of my philosophy on it.
I fully agree, and I think the only way that you get those players to do what you want them to do is be completely honest and have those tough conversations. Because I think if you keep saying, and I've been in situations with coaches before that they keep telling them that you're going to get your chance and you know I see this coming and you're doing better, and it's all basically trying to keep somebody happy and not complain at that moment. But I think long term that just makes it worse. And I think being even with recruits, I tell them now, I said, you might not ever train a minute. You might not ever play a minute. There's no guarantee of training time. And I make training time, I say that. I said, and obviously I put it in, I said, I just don't want you to think that you deserve a chance. You deserve honesty and respect, and that's about it. You don't deserve a chance. You don't deserve a minute of training time. That's not part of your contract. So, and I try to say that to set them up, because I think a lot of times in recruiting and just selling the program, it's, oh, you're going to get this and you're going to get this. And then it's just, it just becomes a problem. Then even with the players here, I clearly told them, like, going into next season, I foresee these being your roles, and you better prepare yourself now for those roles and to do those roles the best you can, because I think that's we think that's what it's going to be. And if they go into the summer and they have their eyes set on a slotting position and they won't even be on the plane, that could be an issue. But now if they know kind of, hey, I still have to do the same physical stuff over the summer and still have to be prepared like everybody else and still have to train as hard, but I anticipate not being on the plane, then everything is a bonus, which sucks. It's tough, and they still have to do the same work like everybody else, but at least you're not giving them false sense of confidence.
You mentioned about the game changing, Randy, over the past 10 odd years. Recruitment of players has obviously gone into overdrive, but also recruitment of coaches has probably stepped up a fair bit as well, with competition in the coaching market of young coaches trying to get in, and a lot more now with the different kind of skill sets. So wanted to get your take on both of you guys setting up your staffs for the new job, and what specific areas or what specific people or characteristics or skill set that you wanted to get in your assistant coaches.
I got some advice from different people of higher specialists, and I think I know what I'm good at, but also know my weaknesses. And we set it up so we got 5 people full time on our staff. We have a director of ops who I kind of transferred. It's still called the director of ops because we have to, but he's basically our video analyst. So we have somebody that take care of all our video. We hired him a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to do basically all our video operations, our analytics, but basically preparing. It's somebody that can't work directly with our players, but he's basically preparing video for the coaching staff, for individual meetings, for team meetings, line meetings, whatever it may be. So I think that, Gary and Randy, you both know it's a huge part of what we do, especially because of the condensed schedule. So to me, video is the second best after playing of teaching. So we hired somebody just for that, just for the operations of video. And then we have a volunteer assistant coach. We have 2 full-time assistant coaches. The volunteer assistant coach is responsible for our attacking set pieces. Our goalkeeping coach, who's obviously responsible for our goalkeeping, but then defensive set pieces. Bree, who was my top assistant, was kind of responsible for all the physical side of how we build training sessions, taking everything from our sports science department and making sure we're on the right track there. She takes care of pretty much, in collaboration with our strength coach, of incorporating the strength components and the mobility and the flexibility components in our warm-ups. And then there's also part of the general training session with myself. So kind of how we, maybe to put it in a training session, what we do is we'll have a video session or a team meeting before every training session, which will be created based on my advice or our staff advice by our video analyst. We'll go through the session, which will be me or one of the coaches based on what we're trying to talk about. Going through the session, which the first warm-up phase, which is like 4 phases, will be with Bree. And then it's like the main training exercise and a game exercise will be with me. And then we'll go into the 2 components of set pieces, which will be 7-minute blocks on each every single day, which is another voice with our other assistant coaches. So that's kind of the workflow we have. And then the operation side of running the program comes from us all. So we have very specific roles and jobs. And our university is fortunate, or we're fortunate to have a university that has people that do our travel and other people. And we have a team manager with us as well. So compared to where we were at Duke to where we are now, we have a lot more people that are involved in the program. And I think I hired people that are really, really good at what they can do, and all have a really good soccer brain and enjoy talking about the game and enjoy holding me accountable as well.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit similar for us. We're the only thing we're lacking that's maybe a little different at this point is a director of ops position, and hopefully we can get that in the next year. But everything else, staffing wise, is very similar. I think for me, Gary, at every stop I've been at over the years at the different universities and even in the pros, I always wanted to get an assistant that I felt like the first quality for me, outside of soccer knowledge and being a good coach on the field, was somebody that I felt would be loyal, and I didn't have to worry about, them coming in around players and questioning what, I'm doing or what we're doing. And those things really tear teams apart very quickly if you don't have people that really have that respect and that loyalty. And so I've always tried to look for that as a quality in our first assistant and really all of our assistants from that standpoint. And then I've always tried to hire a younger assistant that's kind of trying to break in, that I felt like, that you can help influence their coaching careers and educate them a little bit. And, they're usually really hungry and energetic and willing to put a lot of the work in, and, they're okay with grinding things out and putting the hours in that's needed. So I've always kind of felt just on a bigger scale, I've just got an obligation to help continue to develop young coaches, right? Because I had those opportunities when I broke in. I had some people like Shellis Heineman that was willing to bring me in and help me, get my start. So, and certainly I think, then I think at the same time, I want those coaches that are willing to say, hey, Randy, I know we're doing it this way, but what do you think about this? And I don't always want them to say, yeah, hey, this is great. This is great. I don't want that person to always yes to me. I do want them to question in the right way and in the right place. Hey, here's another way. Here's another idea. What do you think about this? And because I think that's how we make each other better, is to feed off of each other. And then I guess for me too, as I've always tried to find somebody that's really good at what I'm not, somebody that, and so just trying to find those matches. It'd be like putting your team together. You need to try to find somebody that can maybe in midfield that is a little better defensively than the one that you have that's more offensive minded, and try to make that mesh. And it's the same with your staff, so that's kind of a general thing that I think I'm looking for when I put my staff together.
Gary, I think maybe this is a funny story, but when I first came into the college scene, everywhere I came, it was like, because there was 2 assistant coaches for the most part, and it was always broken up. Okay, you're doing the defending and you're doing the attacking. And that made me laugh so hard. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, and every session would be broken up, and I'm like, it's like a lacrosse practice. It's like have the team goes there and just do non-contextual defensive work, and then the attackers go to go and score, and then we put it all together. And I'm like, that didn't make sense to me. And I think it's changing all over the country, but I know there's so many situations still where it's I'm responsible for the defenders and you're responsible for the attackers, or you're responsible for the goalkeepers. And I think luckily that's changing, or maybe 50% of the programs it's changing, and the other 50% is still lacrosse based training.
There, a lot of young coaches listening to this would be interested to hear. I'm sure you both get it as well, as experienced coaches. Around you must get inundated with emails about, hey, trying to break in. Hey, have you got any opportunities? Erwin, you probably get it from overseas. Where did you find your coach, and where did you find your staff? Was it from asking people? Did you literally go through every application, or how did that work out?
I think for me, I've been at a few different stops, so it's probably a little bit different than some coaches have with what they're looking for. But I usually, even though I would kind of go through and look at the resumes that were sent, because I did want to see what kind of a pool we were getting. But I would say the majority of the hires I've made over the year have been through contacts and people that I know, and reaching out to people that I respect and asking them about coaches that are out there that might fit the bill. And occasionally you might stumble onto a couple of those resumes that were sent in to you and I got my volunteer coach that way this year, right? I found a coach through the resumes and followed up. So, I would say the young coaches out there have to send those in, because else you don't know that there's that interest level. But I do think that so much of it is networking. So much of it is who you know. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's kind of the way it is, and probably even in business, I would assume, in this country. So, I think I would say more just through people that I know, Gary, that I've looked at, that I've known over the years. And I was fortunate for a long time to be able to coach on U.S. Soccer's, the national coaching staff, and it taught the license programs and that kind of thing. And so I would find a lot of candidates through that. Anytime I would leave the coaching courses or whatever, I would just make notes of some of the young coaches that were there, go, this is somebody to keep an eye on in case I ever need it. So I kind of keep a file of coaches like that I just have in my back pocket if something changes unexpectedly or whatever, and I need somebody. I've kind of got a pool of coaches I can go to right away and see if, see what their interest level might be. But, that's kind of how I've done it. It's usually my first assistant to me is a really important position, because it's almost another head coach. And I want that position to be somebody that's also really, really good at recruiting. I think it's so important. We can be the best coaches in the country, but if we don't have the kids, the players, it doesn't work. So that one's really important, and that's where that one with the loyalty and the trust comes in that I talked about. And so I think that one usually comes from somebody I know, or somebody that I know that I've asked about somebody, that I feel a little closer of a connection to, that I know also that if that coach gets the opportunity, that they're going to know they've got to live up to those people that's recommending them, and, that kind of thing. I think it holds them a little bit more accountable as well. So for me, that's kind of more how I've handled it over the years. And I can't say every coach does it that way, but that's kind of the way I've handled it. Yeah.
When so I didn't know when I got hired by Robbie, or when Robbie invited me to come on campus to talk about the position. I had met Robbie once. It was Holland was playing Mexico, and I was in Seattle after a recruiting event. I was recruiting for Alabama, and at that time we were at Alabama, and we kind of didn't really know where that situation was going in terms of contracts and stuff. So I was watching Holland Mexico, and I was acting just going crazy because it was overtime and it was the World Cup, and I was going crazy. And Robbie was right there with his wife, but sitting outside, watching me, and that's how we started the conversation. Like, and Holland won, and I was like, almost in tears, and Robbie's like, we started talking, and that's when we first met. And then later on, he called me to come in for an interview. So how that went from, and I was a second assistant at Alabama, and at a program that was kind of, not in a great shape right then, and I could have easily lost my job, 4 weeks after that, and I got an offer to go to Duke, and I was lucky to be with really good players and a great coaching staff, and now I'm a head coach at a program. So I think it's kind of being lucky, but also I think making sure you're open to talk to people at all time, and you never know who wants to talk. And I think, I could have handled that situation with Robbie completely different, and I think he liked me as a person, and then maybe he started digging into me as a soccer person, and that's how I got it. And here I kind of did the same way at some of these coaching clinics or recruiting events where you actually have to coach. I wanted to hire a female coach, and you get to see them work, and you get to see, you can talk the game with them, or you work side by side with somebody, and that's how I got to know Bree a little bit. And then I wanted to hire also a coach that hadn't worked. Bree was at Kansas, I was at Duke. It would have been very easy for us to come in here and say everything is crap, nothing is good enough, we don't have the resources. But then we hired Doug, who came from IUPUI. He came in here, and it's like, oh, we got this, and we got this, and it was great because now we can, it's not just nothing is good enough. It's also, oh, this player can do this, and she's pretty good, and it's good to have that balance as well. And so I think that's how it came about. And I think you have to be lucky. I think it's never perfect, and you'll see probably in the time of if you keep winning, you can probably make every staff work well together. But once you start losing a couple in a row, and we'll see how that helps out.
Just on that one then, Erwin, when you're saying about losing a couple in a row, you mentioned about the winning seasons there, Randy, at Pitt, and you both being experienced in very successful programs and now taking a group of players who do not share the same experiences. How are you mapping out the psychological stage of changing that culture and trying to change those expectations to winning games when maybe they're used to starting the season a bit slower? Randy, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm just sitting back as you're saying that, and it's a little, again, different for me because I actually have had one season here under our belt, and but it really wasn't. I think we won one more game than they had won the year before, so it wasn't really much of an improvement. I think where we improved is the way we were trying to play, trying to start to at least imprint our philosophy and how we want the game to look and how we want to approach the game. So I think we improved in that area, but unfortunately it didn't translate to a lot of wins, especially in the conference that we're playing in. It's murder's row in the ACC. So, but I think I kind of look at this year more of our first year because we're bringing in 20 new players, right? So after those conversations last fall, quite a bit of our team left and transferred and found other places. And I think we only have 7 or 8, maybe 9 players from last year's team that are going to stay. And it is almost like starting over a little bit here. And I think it's, so the expectation certainly can't be, it's unrealistic for us to come into preseason and say, let's set our team goals and then start talking about winning national championships. I think teams all around the country do that every summer in preseason in the locker room. Well, we're going to win the conference or we're going to win the national championship. And I think for us, the goals are going to be much different than that. I think we didn't win any for the last few years. Pitt has not won any ACC conference games. So that's got to be somewhere in our goal setting, to start to get some results in the ACC. And then I've always, even I did this at Notre Dame, we always kind of put the season in segments, and now at Notre Dame, the end result was we did want to win a national championship, but we didn't spend the season talking about a national championship, which always seemed far away. We kind of broke it into a non-conference segment. Hey, we got 8 non-conference games. We want to be 8-0. Or if we knew we had a really murderous non-conference, we want to make sure we got 6 wins, at least 6 wins out of these first 8 games, something like that. And then now we're in the conference phase. Here's what we need to do in conference. And now then it's postseason phase. Now things start over and we got to kind of reset those goals. So we broke it down into smaller stages with what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's what we'll do here at Pitt. We'll have to kind of take it a little bit like this is the first piece. It's the non-conference, and our goal is to get as many wins out of these first 8 games before we start conference play. And then we'll kind of rearrange and reset the goals as we get into the ACC. I just think as young as we're going to be, they don't even have the experience of knowing what it's like playing a collegiate game. So to come in and talk about trying to win the ACC or make the conference tournament in the ACC or get into the NCAAs, they don't know that. They don't understand. And as you mentioned, none of our players in the history of our program know that because it hasn't been done. So we've got to change the way we think and not overload them with too much burden early with those expectations. And I think really for us, it's more about let's get better every day in training and let's get better at every game. Even if we don't get the result, did we get better in some of these things that we were trying to do in this game, even if we didn't get the result? So we kind of got to really manage those young players that don't really have the experience to cope with the wins and losses the same way. So sometimes now it's, when we would lose at Notre Dame, it was, like you were morbid, for the whole next week. It was like the the sun never came out again. It just would crush you. And here I think you got to change your mindset as a coach and understand that we're going to lose some games. So now then in those losses, what do we want to make sure we get out of it, that we can take a negative result, but make it something positive to build on for the next weekend and the next weekend's game. So we'll do ours in a lot smaller segments with a lot different kind of expectations than what I would have done at a Notre Dame.
You talk about experience, Gary. I don't really have this experience, especially not as a head coach of a college team, but I do feel that I think players get confidence out of a clear structure and organization, and we even had at Duke when I first came in 2014. They didn't make kind of the similar group, didn't make the tournament, and in 15 we went to the final, and not because I got there or I helped, I think, facilitate that process. We had a couple injuries the year before, but that year we did something completely different, played a different way, approached the game a different way, completely different than most college teams. And I feel like if we at Indiana do the same thing as everybody's trying to do, what the college game is, right? Running around, big loads of transitions, high pressing, building up under. You see some teams with limited ability of the tactics and the technical ability trying to build up out of crazy scenarios, of trying to have the ideal approach of what the game should look like. Then the quality of our players is going to make the difference. But we can hopefully put our team and our players in scenarios that they won't be exposed, and we can count on their quality. So, and I think having a clear structure of how we want to play and how we want to go by that, and players knowing that to a T, which hopefully they will at some point, I think is going to give them confidence, is going to get some results, and then being in games. The worst feeling you can possibly have is at halftime being out of a game and being done, because that it's going to carry over to the next one, and then a goal goes in, and you're like, conceding goals. It's like, last year Indiana gave up 33 goals, and I think they scored 33. But if you give up 33 goals, you're probably going to lose a lot of games. So I think that whole process of we don't. It's almost a bad. I remember first got to Duke and I started saying that, hey, we're not as good as we think we are. We're going to adjust to opponents. It was like, it's the worst thing I've ever said to somebody in my life. Like the way they responded is like, oh, I can't believe you said that to me. And then we started getting some wins based on playing a certain way that maybe played in our favor. Then it was like, okay, starting to understand, especially feel here in America. It's like it's that approach of it's we have to tell everybody that we're better than the other team. It's all about us. It's not. It's always about the opponent and our team. So I think changing that approach a little bit. Hey, we're one of the slogans I've used is we're not as good as most of the teams, but we can beat most of the teams. So I think that that concept of understanding that, hey, we're not going to do the same thing. We're going to approach the game a little different. It's going to be harder for teams to play against us, and hopefully, we'll see after. We'll play. We're playing Carolina at Carolina in the first game of the season. So, we'll
great scheduling there, Erwin.
All right, last one for you, and obviously, I've been there at Bakersfield as well. Whenever you've taken the program, you take over, and there's so much work to do, and we've kind of gone through a few today with staffing, expectations, recruitment, retention. Last question would be, what's the most enjoyable process or part of the process for you personally in taking the new team and going on that new journey?
I love being on the field. I mean, that's where I'm most at home. So I think from kind of the transition of the getting and landing the recruit to now having that player come in at preseason for the first time ever, that to me is an incredible, like right now, I can't wait till we get on the field August 6th, to get started, because, you spend this time trying to work and build through your recruiting, and you get excited about the new players and the possibilities that it brings with it. And you're right, you always get surprised with some that are doing better and some that don't do as well, and some that surprised you and did better than you expected. But putting those pieces together on the field, that part to me is the most enjoyable. I mean, I love winning games. I love game day. but I love the training. You know, the week up to the game to me is, I would do that all the time if I could, because I think that's where the work's done, you know, and game day's great. It's a byproduct of that. But, you know, that's one reason I wish we would go to a split season like the men are proposing, so we can get on the field a little bit more and not have this schedule compacted, so we could do a little more teaching. I feel like in the spring we don't get enough time to really do the teaching that we want. And but that's the part I think that's most enjoyable, just being on the field finally with your team and starting a new season off to see how far you can bring them. And it's like raising a child, you know, it's like you see something new out of them every day, and you see them make progress in certain areas every day. And that's, you know, I remember the national championships we won, and I could tell you a lot about the games, but to be honest with you, I get really now more satisfaction of thinking back about those players and kind of seeing how far they went and how far along they progressed in their career. And then even beyond, you know, seeing the things they're doing now as adults out there with their own families and things, that's a pretty rewarding piece. So I just love seeing the progress that the young kids make, you know, on the field.
Brilliant. Erwin?
Yeah, I think there's two components. I think the making a player understand that they're actually better than they think they are. You know, I think that's so much different on the women's side than the men's side. When the women's side, you on the men's side, I feel like half the battle is to tone them down a little bit and make sure they know they're not as good as they are. Oh, I'm just talking about myself. And on the women's side, I feel like there's so many like hidden qualities or unknowns that players don't even know what they can do. And there's like been 2 or 3 players that I told to, I said, you would have been an All-American at Duke if we had you at Duke. You know, and they like that, and then you see them throughout the spring grow and just in the confidence and they stay humble. I think that process is unbelievable, because that's like fun. That's like you're helping somebody become like, you know, average and not super confident at what they do, and suddenly grow into somebody that actually is a very, very top level player, and they know it too, and they stay humble. So I think that's one part. And then just the soccer part, we got a whole new staff, and just diving into like the way we want to play and the language that comes with it, and how we're gonna implement it, and I think so many things on social media and in books, and it's all realistic, and it's all cool, and the way it's written, and everybody's using different terms, but as a staff, get to the bare bones of what we're trying to teach, and how we're teaching it, and making sure it all fits together, and make sure we all talk the same language and are on the same page, and even go as deep as, okay, what if this, you know, we're talking about how we're going to defend. What if we're going so deep into how we're going to play that even our staff is surprised that, you know, like they've not gone through this, I believe. And then the next day I come back and say, you know, we're going to scratch that. We're going to start over. Like that part is, that's why I love the game so much and love coaching so much. And then, you know, implementing on, like Randy said, on the training field is unbelievable. And then, you know, me going into the season as a first-time head coach, I'm pretty damn excited. I'm probably going to act like a maniac on the sideline, but we'll try to behave a little bit.
Anson Dorrance will put you in your place first game of the season.
Yeah. No, well, it'll be interesting.
Brilliant. Randy, Erwin, thank you so much. We wish you both the very, very best of luck during the season. Excited to watch it, keep up with it, and really, really, really appreciate you coming on. First class.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, guys. And listen, appreciate the work you're both doing out there for the sport. And it's great to see young coaches like you guys really coming in and taking hold of the game. And I know it's going to be in good hands for years to come.
Thanks so much to Erwin and Randy for their time and insight there. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think it's always interesting when coaches go through different processes when building or rebuilding programs. And sometimes I think with the internet today and social media and even things like Championship Manager and the access we have to statistics, that it's almost viewed that you can just come in and change things based on your philosophy. But in many ways, that's the easy part, is deciding what you want or what way you want to shape it. the most difficult part is that initial experience of change and maybe a little bit of resistance, and not resistance where people are saying, no, I don't want to do this, but that piece where Randy's talking about where the quality has to be at a certain level, or where Erwin's talking about where the mentality has to be at a certain level, or the thought process has to be at a certain level. And then, going a step beyond that and then saying, well, then how do you align your staff with that, or how do you recruit staff with that there? And you could be there all day. You could go down any of those roads: recruitment, staffing, culture. But what I found when studying the top teams, or what I found being fortunate enough to talk to a lot of coaches with this podcast, is the more clear the coaches and the more consistent they are with their processes, and the easier that becomes. And Erwin said that as well with the players. They want to know they want to know where they stand, and I think that's the case across the board. And if you go back to the podcast, that one of the biggest responses we had to a podcast was Jeremy Gunn, and I thought he was just crystal clear throughout that conversation, and that conversation today reminded me of that there. And I'm not sure whether that comes with experience or whether that's just initial quality, and that's probably a different podcast, is how you align those processes. How soon can you do that? Can a 23, 24, 25-year-old coach know exactly how those processes work and how to work around them? Or does that take a little bit of failure, a little bit of success, and just an overall experience over a few years? And I think Randy and Erwin, I thought where they were really, really great was putting that perspective in with those other programs and giving their dues to people like Shellis Hyman. Randy was talking about, Erwin talked about Robbie quite a few times. So they're very appreciative of the journey they've been on. They're very respectful and very humble about the people who have helped them and have developed them. And I think that is, again, a consistent message in the podcast, where we've got some top coaches, and they never forget where they came from, and they never forget of who impacted them and why. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I think there's one or two talking points within that podcast that maybe might bring about a little bit of engagement online. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, as always, at Gary Curneen on Twitter, at Gary Curneen on Instagram. Always appreciate you listening to the podcast. Have a great week. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Soccer Coach Podcast. For more coaching topics, sessions, and resources, head on over to Coach Curneen on Facebook, or visit the website at www.modernsoccercoach.com.